Okie dokie. Thank you all for arriving. We have 12 people, it looks like. That's awesome. Hope everybody's having a great day. Today we get to hear a conversation and a presentation by Kelly Stanhope and John Rice. And we can have an optional time at the end with 4-bys if you'd like. I can break everybody up into rooms, and if nobody's interested, we don't have to do that. But we will end the presentation at 12:30 or a few minutes after. And I think we're ready to go. We all know Kelly and John Rice, I hope. We do have one of our newer members, Gabriel, here. So I'm excited to meet him for the first time. Any questions anybody has? Okay. Take it away, Kelly and John. Do you want me to share the hosting with you guys?
No, that's not. I don't need it. I'll be able to share.
That's not necessary?
Yeah. So I did just put into the chat, if you would just pull up your chat, everyone, if you just go down to the bottom and hit chat, it'll come up on the side there. And I did just share with you a JumpStart fact sheet, which will be helpful for people to understand what JumpStart does and does not do. And then if you want, I also put my contact information in there, and I'll have John do the same thing, and anybody else who wants to share your contact information at this point, and you can always save those yourself when you go down there. We thought it might be a good idea to share a little bit more about JumpStart. So I'm just going to give the overview of JumpStart, kind of how it started, what it is and isn't. Again, you can look at that fact sheet. I'm going to show you the website. And I've invited John, who was a former TAN member, who has used the group, I think maybe twice, to talk with businesses and help them through this group, through JumpStart. There's also kind of a more structured mechanism to get people through JumpStart, which happens through the website. So I'm gonna just share the website first, and I wanna say a quick thank you to Alice and Ray, who's with us today and helped us put this together. And this is the JumpStart website. These are the things that we're saying we are able to help people in based off of the expertise that is part of TAN. And if you hit the Learn More button, it takes you to basically an opportunity to put in some things about yourself and about JumpStart. This is all of the consultants that are part of JumpStart that were part of the original group that got together to talk about it. And if you basically go in, it will email the people who are part of the JumpStart background, which is the Theodora project from Michael Podolny. So I just wanted to give you a quick kind of overview on what that looked like. So JumpStart basically started as a response from Michael Podolny to what was happening with COVID, with people shutting down, not knowing what to do with their businesses, realizing that they may have to rethink their businesses, retool their businesses, replan their businesses, or get the difficult conversation of not having their business anymore. And he, I think Michael is truly a give to get person. That's where he comes from. And he felt like this would be an opportunity for not just the TAN members. The original group that talked about this was also composed of a handful of people outside of TAN that were people that Michael has known for many years that felt would be really good in helping people evaluate what they needed to do. So as of right now, JumpStart is not what a lot of the other bigger groups are doing. SCORE and West, who we're talking to in terms of dovetailing with what they're doing and how they're trying to help businesses, they both offer a lot of webinars, a lot of classes, a lot of some face-to-face, but mostly kind of webinar-based support in terms of how do you get your business going in the right direction. We are not doing that. We're not offering webinars. We're not offering classes. We are offering the opportunity for people, business owners, to sit down directly with experts to figure out what they need to do next. The mechanism by which that happens is that once somebody sends an email to Michael and the group, they get a bit of a survey. It's only 5 questions. It asks them what their business is, how many people are in their business, what position they hold, and what do they think their most critical needs are right now. That goes to what we're calling kind of an opportunity assessor, who reaches out and talks to that person directly to help them figure out what group of professionals should they talk to next. That can be up to an hour consultation. And then that opportunity assessor would then set up the second meeting with people from TAN or outside of TAN that would help directly deal with the issue that they've all identified. Is it financial? Is it marketing? Is it sales? Is it restructuring internally? Is it financial? So then the next meeting they would go to would be directly with those people. That would be an Allison Ray or a Jeff Gruber or a David Hansen, or a, or a Kathy or a Peter. Any of you could be part of that next group should you choose to be part of JumpStart. And that would only be an hour-long consultation. And that would really be to help someone understand, here are some things that you could do immediately to get your situation better on track. It is, again, not a solicitation for them to then hire you as a consultant. It is really in the give to get spirit of really helping them think about what is next for them to try to get on track. So again, the fact sheet tells you what we do and don't do. And the website is there listing all the people who are part of it now. We do have a mechanism set up that if you are not part of it right now and want to be, then we would just need a bit of a bio and we would stick you in that group. So that's kind of what the overview of JumpStart looks like. I don't want to just be lecturing people. Does anyone have any comments, questions, anything they'd like to ask about what you've heard so far? No. Okay. So I just want to check to see if there was anything else. That we were going to share and show folks, and it was really just that and then the fact sheet. So John, I'm going to let you kind of talk about your real life kind of situation with JumpStart so far, and then we can talk as a group about what we're hoping to do with this and what we're hoping that you leave this meeting with.
I had a moment to find the unmute.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk about 3 different companies approach to problems in COVID. One of which was done as a TAN JumpStart exercise, and the first one being TAN JumpStart. I know a woman who owns a restaurant. Long-term family business, and it was obvious that she was struggling with what to do for all the reasons that are clear. And so I said, why don't you help us figure out how to do JumpStart? You can be a test client. And then we really got a break, which is, it turned out her accountant is Jonathan Kahn, a TAN member. So that was a big break. And so think of this as an analog to each TAN member's position. You have a client, in this case, it's Jonathan, you have a client, and the client is clearly struggling. And the problems that these companies have are never things that one person alone is likely to be able to help them solve in COVID. because we're dealing with business professionals who know how to run a restaurant or whatever their business is, and they have problems that aren't typical or part of the normal reality of running their business. And so we put together a team of Michael and Craig Dill and me and Jonathan, and met with the client. And what was interesting about it was having to take a step back with her, to help her take a step back. And Michael put out, a couple of questions to identify, okay, what's your situation? And then he followed that up with a very detailed sort of Podolny associates a paper interview in which he really had to identify what are the most important things to me in my business. What is my exit plan whenever it needs to be, and a series of questions that force the entrepreneur to evaluate their business and also to evaluate themselves. And so she came into the meeting with a good deal of introspection about the business and about herself, which was really helpful. I mean, and it took place at the restaurant, and it was sitting down, and it was spaced and all of that. But it was a setting that we were able to make entirely safe and hers. So I felt a part of the success of this effort would be that at least the setting for the entrepreneur was optimum, and as unthreatening as possible. The second part of the upfront questions was to determine some basic business facts with Jonathan's assistance, which effectively are what are the assets and the liabilities of this enterprise, and what are the assets and liabilities of the entrepreneur beyond the enterprise. And the value of the business and assets and liabilities material was that it enabled us on the business side to have a clearer sense of alternatives for the restaurant and for the entrepreneur. And at that point, the people we had in the room were an operating turnaround guy and me, a high-level turnaround guy, and human exit succession expert in Michael, and two really good CPAs of different natures. Craig Dill as a guy with a lot of turnaround and crisis experience, Jonathan with operating experience, and so on and so forth. And so what we were able to do with the entrepreneur was to help her understand her alternatives. We did not say you have to do anything, but it was a matter of if you determine that you cannot reopen, then you need to deal with the problem of the landlord. And we've read the lease, and so we know that you actually have a maximum 12 months exposure if you gave notice now. And so if you want to end this, this is a big successful restaurant, your downside exposure on the rent is $50,000. And and so we went through a series of what is the problem, what is the cost, what is the solution with her, and that enabled her to leave the first session saying, okay, I have choices, I have options, and I am much less threatened than I thought I was. That I walked into this in a binary mindset. I fail or I succeed, and I can't figure out in this climate how to succeed. Then there was a follow-up meeting with Craig on the part 2 of this process, essentially dealing with some of the crisis elements of how do I negotiate this thing or that thing. And so I don't know what the final outcome will be yet, but what I saw of value in the process was that we were able to provide different point of view, out of the box look at her situation. And I think that was of value. We did not give her value as a restaurateur, although Michael knows something about restaurants and so does Jonathan. That wasn't the question. The question was the higher level issue of, all right, what are the possibilities going forward? If you were to reopen, what would that cost? What are the benefits? How much of your business can you lose and survive? And all of those analyses were not about being a restaurant, but as a business, how much can you cut this and still live? And so working her through that gave her a much clearer sense of where she was. So the value to a TAN member, in my view, is that if you have a client whom you think needs to seriously reinvent themselves or have radically different approaches to preserve or redeploy their assets or to use their assets differently, this process is pretty good. A second example of this at a lower level is the Sigma Labs, which is the company I'm chairman of and was CEO of. And a problem we had at Sigma was that we have to send technologists all around the world to, and suddenly we can't send them anywhere. And how are we going to support our customers? And we reached out of the company looking for solutions. And the solution that came back is elegant and wonderfully simple, which is we can now send Oculus headsets to a customer who needs service or an installation. And their tech, expert with their factory equipment and all the rest, can put on the goggles, and our techs can see what he or she sees and be talking with them as they guide the techs in Munich or Hamburg or Beijing through a technical procedure. Our company will forever be using that. We are not going to be sending people all over the world except in really rare cases. So that's a problem solved in COVID that has the company doing something we never would have thought of that for another 5 years, and it was a benefit. But it was, again, it's reaching outside to get ideas is the value of that. The third example is actually not TAN, but TEN, the Taos Entrepreneur Network, working with a tea company. And the company's core business was formulating teas, and it was doing amazingly well in that tiny community. COVID was just a killer, and a very resourceful entrepreneur continued in the tea business, but also started making organic hand sanitizer. And by taking this departure, was able to survive, and now the tea business is reopening. She's doing fine. So my bottom line in thinking about this for 10, I think the value of JumpStart is essentially what these three different companies experienced, which is faced with things they suddenly, that they used to need to do and now can't do. They reached outside, talking with other brains, and ended up with resourceful solutions that carry them forward. In the case of the restaurant, I think there's a strong possibility that the solutions will lead to a reinvention, closing the existing restaurant and reemerging, leveraging the assets in another direction, but we'll see. So my suggestion to all 10 members is, I think it would be beneficial to all of the clients of all of us to tell them about this and sort of say, if you want a different look at the situation, you don't just have to hunker it down and try to survive this or wait till it's over. This may not be over in its lasting impacts for years. Some of the changes that your competition is making that you may not feel you have to do yet could put you out of business. So reach out, use JumpStart, use the process of getting some experienced people with different backgrounds to look at your business at a high level to see what other alternatives you may have. That's all I got.
Any questions, any thoughts, anything from hearing that, Jeff?
Yeah, John, real quick, I may have missed it, but how did the contact come in for this restaurant client? How did it come from Jonathan, or did it come from her to?
Oh, no, in this case, it came from me.
Oh, okay. Okay. We have cats. And when Debbie and I travel, we have a cat sitter who's a wonderful kid, and her mom owns the restaurant. That's how I met okay.
her mom.
I got it. Okay, thanks.
Allison.
Kelly, how many people have come in through the website or other? No, none? None. Okay, that tells us what we need to know about promotion and marketing. And John, thank you for the heads up about the Oculus. I had no idea, even though I continue to, talk with Sigma every single day. I didn't know about that, and that's going to be a nice little feature that we're going to talk about so that we can let people know that we're adjusting in COVID on the Sigma level. And then I also wanted to mention that Tammy McCarty brought me in with a client that she's been working with on the financial side in Albuquerque, whose business and whose industry was devastated by COVID and will not probably recover. The industry will not recover to the level that it used to be. It's a very decent sized service business, consumer service business in Albuquerque. So Tammy's been helping them reconfigure on the financial level, and they've made some big changes there. And then we've been helping them on a branding and messaging level to help customers understand how to still use their company during this changing, economic landscape. And we've had to get really inventive about that. We're about to introduce a new website that talks about that messaging and some new video work and some ads in social media and so forth. This company has had to get really, really scrappy. They've coasted along on a family business that's been known pretty well, and they've been very, very, very competitive, but now their industry is literally being wiped out. So that's exactly and then he found out about JumpStart and he goes, what's this? So I invited him to go ahead and go through that process, because I thought, what a great test case for us. So I will encourage him again to have you guys, bring him through the process, because I'm sure there's more that can happen with him. He was already in process with Tammy and then with me before JumpStart even got started. So thank you all for volunteering and helping out with those businesses. And I would love to hear about more companies that might be in need, and how do we get them in the door for JumpStart? We can help with that. Right, Kelly? Kepke?
Yeah, I think that that's one of the biggest things right now, and one of the reasons that we decided to do the education platform to talk more about JumpStart is that, not being a marketer, I do understand one general concept, which is that you cannot market a couple weeks and hope that it works. I have been the one that has been posting stuff on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I've kind of trailed off because that's not my forte and it's not something I keep up with every day, but it's the only way I know to get the word out there, but it's not enough. It's really that people have to know that this tool is available and what it's used for and what the benefit is for someone to go through it, that it's free of charge. And it's really this TAN community saying, how can we help people who are struggling? So the marketing piece does need to get retooled a little bit. I'm happy to do more of it. I just need, I just thought having people understand more about what the mechanism is and hearing John talk about how it's actually been used in some formal and informal ways would be helpful to people. I talk about it at the TAN meetings, but it's not as good as hearing John's stories and how it really can be put to use. So, you know, that's kind of what we're trying to do. Jeff?
Yeah, real quick, a couple of observations. I like John's idea that we as TAN members have clients, and if our clients are struggling, then we ought to take advantage of the expertise under the JumpStart configuration or logistical configuration to give them some advice and another perspective that they may not have, because as John said, they might be hunkered down in their own bunker, but they're not taking advantage of advice. The other observation is that we actually put JumpStart as the sponsor of the next alternative funders meeting, which is the end of October. So that's a way to get it out in a network audience that's different than our TAN colleagues, you know, because you have folks from all kinds of funder sources who may have clients that are in the same boat and said, yeah, I really think that there's some counsel and advice and collegial advice that we can give folks. So that's another way to market it is through our other network opportunities. And then Kelly and I have been trading emails, Kelly Stanhope and I have been trading emails about the incubator, because the incubator continues to push out advisors information about clients that are struggling. And I have a sense, I don't know if this is right or not, but that some of those opportunities might be referrals to JumpStart. So Kelly's following up on that with Jessica at the incubator, and because they're literally statements of, I'm struggling in my business in Silver City and I need some advice, and what do I do? And Jessica is just putting them out to the incubator universe and seeing what happens. But that doesn't mean there's a structured way to go about giving this person, if they really are a JumpStart opportunity, the right advice and the right counsel. So those are a couple of observations that I had, Kelly.
Yeah, and I think I was actually going to follow up on that. John, go ahead.
So Allison, I am so glad to see you, just because I haven't forever. I am concerned that you do not have large enough glasses, and I hope you will repair that the next time you see you. Allison, I think a lot of this may be a marketing, branding issue. I'm not sure that JumpStart may be too routine a name in an odd time. Yeah, you know, in other words, it's just another thing. It's like Score, JumpStart, Incubator. So we may need to brand it differently and to describe it differently. It's not a consulting firm. I mean, this is a form of crisis intervention, triage, out of the box thinking kind of stuff. We're not providing you at meeting 1 or meeting 2 with people who are expert in your industry necessarily, so much as we're providing you with folks whose task it is to work with you to see things differently and levels of opportunity that are non-traditional to the industry you're in.
Yeah.
So go ahead and solve the problem, Allison.
Thanks, John. I'll get on it.
So I wanted to circle back really quick. Sorry, Peter. Go ahead, and then I'll circle back.
I just wanted, an observation as you're, possibly thinking about rebranding, that many of your examples were not the start, but rather the restart. So, I would think about that as an important offering. It's not just for people who are starting their businesses. It's for people who need to or ought to rethink their business and how to best deploy their assets.
You bet. I'm thinking about maybe we should just call it Now What?
No, absolutely. Yep. So
I think actually that's an excellent idea, the now what, or now what in a time of COVID. It's like love in the time of cholera, right? Anyway, so what really struck me as you were telling your stories about all of the three businesses, that they were all a perfect example of something that Shauna talks about all the time, and that we deal with in the work that we do is possibility thinking. And I think your point is super well made, that no matter how creative you're in that space, which is going to be very tough when you're feeling stressed by the COVID situation. I mean, one of the things that when you're stressed is you go back into that primitive brain that shuts down that ability to really engage this part of the brain. And that possibility thinking probably has to come from outside, which is what I heard you say, that outside, out of the box. And that's actually something that Kelly and I heard many times when we worked together, was people would say, what you bring is that outside perspective of seeing things that we were not able to see ourselves. You have to get out of the weeds in order to see the forest. Yeah, Kelly.
So the marketer in me, and Allison I can see the wheels turning in her head too. There's been a couple of things that have surfaced here that are great messages for JumpStart. First is get the outside perspective. So because you can't see the forest for the trees message. The second is nothing succeeds like success. We have 3 success stories already from JumpStart. So let's tell them. Let's tell those stories in the marketing for the program. And that was my big takeaway from John's stories, which was, wow, even if that restaurant never reopens, she got the advice to make decisions, which is all she needed, right? So it wasn't about reopening the business or deciding to close the business. It was about getting the information to make the decisions about the business. Because we can't do that as a group, right? As advisors, we can't make those decisions for people, but we can help them understand their options, and that's that outside perspective again. So that's sort of my takeaway from this, and things we need to think about as we market the program.
Thank you, Kelly. I think I wanted to circle around too with what Jeff was sharing. There are several groups trying to do what JumpStart's doing in terms of helping businesses. It's an obvious thing that people are struggling. And so we're also trying to figure out better ways to dovetail with those groups in order to be the good fit if that's what we are. So the emails that Jessica is sending out from the incubator are actually a pilot program from a Main Street group that's being run by Sean O'Shea, who was part of the incubator, and he's running several of them all around the state and trying to get people who are struggling to ask for help, and they're running it through the Council of Advisors for the incubator. And my conversation, I'm meeting with him on Tuesday, is if you don't get people from the advisory group responding, then can we run this through JumpStart? Because this is exactly what we're looking for, that we would be a good fit for, which is a business is struggling, they don't know what to do, they've already identified themselves, and we have people that can help them. So can we, you know, I don't want to step on anybody's toes because that's going out specifically to the COBA group for the incubator, but if they're not getting responses, then let us respond. So there's a couple groups that I feel like we are trying to get more involved with, that are hearing from people that could put us in touch with people in order to do this. SCORE and West, although we have talked to them several times, are, you know, I don't know what the in is there. I don't know what kinds of people they're hearing from, or businesses, or what they're doing. But we're not getting the kind of dovetailing that we're looking for with groups, but that doesn't mean that we won't at some point, because we're just looking at the beginning of this crisis. I mean, people are going to be in crisis for a while. And so this Main Street group we're talking to, we're trying to talk to SCORE, we're trying to talk to West. The city of Santa Fe has been trying to put out JumpStart stuff for a while now. Kelly Kepke was in good communication with Liz Camacho, and I continue to get her economic development newsletter, and we're referenced in that. So there's a lot of information out there, and part of the marketing that I think both Michael and I felt was so important here is that we're not just offering, we're offering real experts to talk to you. We're not offering just another link to, here's how you do the PPP, or take this webinar and learn how to, you know, rebrand yourself. Or it's not, those might be the answers, but people are looking for somebody to walk them through it, to talk with them about it, to be the expert that says, hey, let me give you some real insight from my perspective that you may be able to work with. So we're going to follow up on all that and see what we can do. Go ahead, John.
I think, Kelly, you're hitting on something that is maybe a major part of the problem here, which is, it's not clear to me that, I think it's clear to me that JumpStart is not differentiated from what else is out there. I think that SCORE, the incubators, and a number of other folks are all seen as being more or less the same in the marketplace, and probably see JumpStart as competing or conflicting with something they're very good at doing, and so on and so forth. I think that to the extent that we can define JumpStart as a narrow niche, high level problem-solving entry, and differentiate it from training, from being people expert in your specific industry, helping you work solutions in that track. This is the higher level thing, which is going to help you figure out whether you can or should stay in that track, depart from that industry, or transform, so on and so forth. So I think that the wording and definition of this thing doesn't differentiate it from the noise of others in the marketplace trying to help out in the time of COVID. And I think if we don't fix that, it'll be invisible and just sort of wither.
Yeah. I think, yeah, no, and we really haven't gotten any traction. So, you know, we haven't really even had the chance to bloom yet at this point. So we will be talking with people a little bit more. I know that Michael wanted to be on this call, but I think he's in Ghana, and he wasn't able to join for various reasons. But we are going to circle back to this, circle back to the bigger group. You know, I think this has helped us all think about a different kind of marketing strategy, which I'm happy to help with, or help implement, or post more, or do whatever we feel would be better. But I do think some of it is also possibly a very quick presentation to some of those groups about what JumpStart is, that's very cohesive, so that they understand it a little bit better as well, which I would be happy to do. So lots of ideas. Appreciate the you sharing, John, and being here. I'm gonna put Gabriel on the spot here really quick, which is that being someone who's new to TAN and new to the group and hearing these conversations, and we've had this conversation going on now for months between us, I'm curious to know what you think of what you're hearing, if you find value in it, or it would be very interesting to hear from someone who hasn't been in on these discussions, what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for looping me in. I heard a lot of things that I agreed with. My background is all in banking. So the first thing that comes to mind is trying to identify where struggling businesses are going to get information, to get advice. So I think a lot of business owners are going to their banks. They're going to CDFIs like DreamSpring and West, Loan Fund. You know, those are good organizations to talk with. But I think there's an opportunity to collaborate more than anything. That's what I'm hearing. I think it's one thing is getting the message out there, and I agreed with, I think it was John that said that it's hard to differentiate this program versus others that are out there. And there's a lot of noise for sure. There's definitely a lot happening. So I think making these having some sort of collaboration with organizations, business consultants. I'm sure some of you maybe know Trish Abbin from the Small Business Development Center where she was at previously. She's doing business consulting on her own. But the small business development centers, that's one thing that comes to mind. And really, it's not so much who they are, what they do, but it's more, I feel like the opportunity is that they're maybe at capacity for a lot of these requests. I know in banking, April came around and the phones were just ringing off the hook. So maybe taking some of that burden away from people and saying, hey, if you find an opportunity for this or that, but it has to be very clear what the mission of this is, and then reaching out to those folks. That's kind of what I'm hearing, what I think maybe some opportunity for collaboration.
Sure. Thanks for answering that, Gabriel. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just wanted to hear, because we've all been thinking about this and been talking about it. So I just wanted to hear kind of an outside perspective. So there's been a lot going on in the chat, folks, just so that you know, there is the JumpStart fact sheet, which is helpful in terms of content and what JumpStart is and isn't. Please feel free to save that for yourself so that you have some content if you were to talk to somebody about it. The JumpStart website is up and running. I have a feeling there will be a different kind of approach to things that are going on LinkedIn and Facebook. And I'll be trying to post that stuff, you know, as much as possible and get back into doing that a little bit more regularly. I know marketing is not a one-time thing. There's also been the JumpStart website link that's been put in the chat. So all of that's easy to get to. So yeah, I think that's about it. Just appreciate people giving us the opportunity to talk about it. It's giving me some ideas about how I might want to talk about it to other groups as well. And yeah, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Ann.
Okay, I have a few follow-up questions for you, Gabriel. One thing that hit me as you were talking, and then I was comparing back to the story that John Rice shared first, is that a bank might be in a similar position to be able to do that kind of evaluation for the assets and liabilities, all of the financial resources. And I'm curious, when a bank does that kind of thing, do they look at the business and the personal assets as well? And the other thing I heard you say that may actually be the bigger differentiator is that the phones are ringing off the hook, and you may be oversaturated. So even if you do provide that kind of information, you don't have the capacity right now to meet everybody's needs. So just curious on, do you look at both the business and the personal assets?
Yeah, those are great questions. We do look at individual information as well as the company. So we would have access to all of that information, tax returns, personal financial statements, generally, and this is almost across the board, but it's 2 to 3 years of tax returns that we would be looking at. So if we were getting into a deal that we were looking at, maybe had some interest in, we would have some trends and we could see how they were impacted over the last, 9 months or so. And we would also see how they were performing the previous year. So that trend is really helpful to see where they're at, areas they might be struggling in. And I think it's a great opportunity to, and again, talking about how busy the banks have been, but it's an opportunity to have a place for lenders to refer for, if there's a clear benefit where they can say, you need to talk to this group. This is a resource that's available. They can connect you with experts to help you out in these areas, right? For me, as a banker, and probably for a lot of you, I think it's really important to have just a really clear understanding of the benefit. If it's just 1 or 2 things, that would be really ideal, because I'm really busy. I have a lot of stuff going on, and it's easy for me to just say, okay, this is the person you need to talk to. Here's the benefit of this resource, right? So, and the reason I say that is because you already have the Small Business Development Center. You have SCORE, you have WEST. So then for me to send somebody to one of those organizations, I need to understand the value and the differences between those. So anyway, I hope that answers the second part of the question there, but the first part, we absolutely do see the personal and the business information when somebody comes in and requests a loan.
Okay, so thank you for that additional insight. I'm thinking, based on what you just said, that right off, the simple thing we can say for JumpStart is that it offers that outside perspective, as we've said already, and it does it quickly. This is the place a bank could send people to us to say, you probably would benefit from talking to these people first to decide whether you want to go through the longer, more in-depth process that you have to go through for the bank, or whatever other option you may be looking at. These people will help you get a sense of where the next step might best be placed. And they just help you look at the information. You still have to make the decision, but they help you see what is needed to make those decisions. So that I think is something I would like to leave you with as a banker right now, that we have this opportunity right there up front. And sounds like it's a focus for our messaging maybe. And now to wrap it up, does anybody want to stick around and do quick 4x connections, or do we just want to end the session? Are we ready to move on, or do you want to make some quick connections with each other in small groups?
I have a 12:30, so I'm going to have to.
Don't everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anyone? Here's a question. Anyone want to stick around? I'll put it that way. Okay. So I think it sounds like we're wrapping it up. So far, we've offered that stick around thing, and it doesn't happen. So that's all right. Lots of time for that in other situations. Thank you very much, everyone. We got a little extra time, and go on with your day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Hey,
Kelly.
John.